Well, hello and welcome to another Faith, Philosophy and Life with me, Mr. Shelton. Behind me today is the city of Jerusalem, and you can see just over my left-hand shoulder the Wailing Wall. This is the last piece of the Jewish temple which is currently in existence. Then you've got the Dome of the Rock, which is a very holy Muslim site. Okay, so this whole area of Jerusalem is one which is very, very, very special to many, many, many Jews, if not all of them. So what we are going to do today is we're going to think about Israel. We're going to think about what is known in the Tanakh as the Promised Land. Okay, so today then, what we are going to do is we've been thinking about Jewish Chronicles, and last time we got to the Jews escaping from Egypt, and then you've got the Exodus, which is our key word that goes with that. So we've got the Abrahamic covenant, the Noahic covenant, looked at Adam and Eve, looked at Joseph, and the Jews in our narrative today have escaped from Egypt. So the question goes, where do they go? Okay, so today's title, for those of you making notes, is What Happened in the Promised Land? So our learning objective is to explore what happened after the Exodus. And what we're going to do today as well, we're going to create an article in a style of a newspaper. So that's where we're heading. Can I please remind you that you need your workbooks as well, which were done in session 1. If you've only recently logged on, please go back to session 1, look at my Google Drive links and download the appropriate workbook, because you're going to need that during today's session. Our outcomes today then, it's going to be a good outcome if you can retell the next events of the Tanakh's history. Remember, we said the Tanakh is what Christians would call the Old Testament. It's the 3 books of the Torah, the Nevi'im and the Ketuvim, and we're going to spend a lesson on that in a few weeks' time. A great outcome would be if you can explore how King David shaped the Jewish history through his successes and his failures, and an even better outcome is if you can evaluate if the return to Jerusalem, I should say, was as important as when the Jews entered the Promised Land. So again, we are going to be thinking about our value of forgiveness, because that flows through really, really well with what we're learning today. So during today's lesson then, we're going to look at the commandments, we're going to look at the story of David, and we're going to look at the fall of the king. So we are in our 3rd lesson of our sequence of Exodus to King David, and that will take us next time to the exile and the return. Before we get to the Promised Land, however, there's a few little gaps that we need to fill. So to do that, I'm going to turn to one of my kids' favourite TV programs, VeggieTales. You may have seen it. There are now series on Netflix for them. However, this is the original, and therefore we always know the original is the best. And this is Talking Vegetables. Yes, you heard it right. Talking Vegetables, talking about the story of where we're up to. So let's watch this now. Go.
Oh. So these must be the Israelites.
Yep.
In the middle of nowhere.
Oh, now that is a good question. Have you ever heard of a guy named Moses?
Isn't he the one who parted the Red Sea?
Right again, but we're going to go back a little further. The Israelites were living in Egypt, but not because they wanted to. No, the Egyptians had taken them captive and were making them work very hard as their slaves. It was miserable, but God cared about the Israelites, so he sent Moses to lead them out of Egypt and into their own land, the Promised Land.
This is the Promised Land?
No. Oh, the land God promised them was wonderful. You could grow things and there was lots of food. No, this is the desert.
So why are they here?
Ah, yes. That is the point. When Moses and the Israelites left Egypt, all they had to do was follow God's directions, and they'd go right to the Promised Land. But they didn't always follow God's directions. Sometimes they went their own way instead.
What do you mean?
Well, for example, Moses led them to the Promised Land right away. But when some of the Israelites took a look around, they saw people there that looked like giants. That scared them so much they wouldn't go in. They got to the land God promised them, and then they turned around and ran away.
Oh, my.
Now, God was very disappointed in the Israelites for not following his directions, so he told them that none of them could go into the Promised Land for 40 years.
You're kidding me.
Nope. That's why they're stuck here in the desert.
Wow.
By the time 40 years had gone by, Moses had died.
I thought this story was about him.
No, it's about Joshua.
Joshua? Who's he?
Well, he was Moses' helper. When Moses died, Joshua became Israel's new leader.
Okay, so that brings us up to speed of where we're up to. So what I'd like you to do in your booklets, okay, this is just some really basic information here. While in the desert, God gave the Jews the mitzvot. That's the 613 laws that Jews needed to follow. And they're written in the Torah, the first 5 books of the Tanakh. 10 of these 613 laws, though, did hold some special importance or significance. And they're the ones known as the 10 Commandments. Now, they're very, very famous, and I'm sure you're already aware of some of them. So in your booklet, I'd like you to pause this clip and to write down the 10 Commandments that you already know. Let's see if you can do that. Go. Okay, so before we have the big reveal on that, I just want you to remember that Moses died in the desert, Joshua took up the role as the Jewish leader, and they did end up in the Promised Land with Joshua. So, these are the 10 Commandments. Okay, these are dumbed down versions, but again, we're going to spend some time in lessons looking at the 10 Commandments in a bit more depth. So these will do for the moment. Okay, so if we look at our learning objective, we said we'd explore what happened after the Exodus, and we said we'd retell the next events in the Tanakh's history. So we've got the Jews having escaped from Egypt. We've got Joshua taking charge after the 613 mitzvot are given, and that is where we're up to at the moment. So if we go to our timelines that you've been drawing some lovely pictures on, if we can also add the 10 Commandments and the Promised Land now. So on your timelines, can you also add the 10 Commandments, the Promised Land? You can see the arrow going back up, the line going back up, and that's because things are improving for the Jews. So it was the lowest point when the Jews were in Egypt, and when they escape, things start to improve. They're heading towards the Promised Land, which is the land that God promised them. If you remember back to Abraham, Abraham was promised that he would be a father of a great nation if he left the land he was in. And here you've got the fulfilling of this, that he's got as many descendants as there are stars in the sky. That's why there's so many Jews that were escaping from Egypt. And his name is famous because we're still talking about him. And they're on the way to the Promised Land to get a land that he was promised, the land that as far as he could see. So let's get those pictures drawn now. Okay, so in the land then, the Promised Land that is, the Jews were ruled by judges, people that God appointed to look after them. And over a time, the Jews decided that they didn't want to be ruled by a judge, they wanted to be ruled over by a king, like the other nations were. And after much thinking and much praying, God decided that they would be granted their wish, but he did warn them that their fate would be tied in with the king. So Saul was appointed as the first king, and Saul did a reasonable job, apart from he did decide eventually that he was going to try and kill a number of people, including a young shepherd boy called David. Now, David was appointed to be the next king by God. And it is David, or King David, where the Magen David symbol comes, or the Star of David that some of you will know. which is the Jewish symbol. It is David who goes on to become the next king, and in all accounts, he is probably one of the best kings if not the best king that the Jews had. It certainly was the most peaceful time in Jewish history, and things were going well for the Jews until one day he fell in love with somebody else's wife, and let's just say things did not go well for him from that point on. God did judge him and God did forgive him, according to what the Jews believe. However, it did result in a child dying, and it also resulted in the Jews never quite being the same again. So in your booklets, you will find the story of King David. I would like you to have a read over of that. And then what you're going to do is you are going to create a newspaper article. There's a template there on the screen for you. There's points as well I've put underneath. And I'd like you to create a newspaper article and summarize it into an email as well to say what happened. Why was it that King David made that? What happened in terms of this mistake and what events led to it and what was God's judgment? And the question I'd like you to consider is, did that change the Jews? Because don't forget, King David was a representative of Judaism, so what King David did was going to change the way the Jews lived in the Promised Land. This activity may take you some time, so I'll invite you now to pause the clip and to be working through that now. Thank you. Okay, so well done for getting that done. So we've now added King David to our timeline. That's at the very top of the second section. Things go back downhill from here, which we'll look at more next time. So if we can just draw that now. During today's session then, we said a good outcome would be if we could retell the next events of the Tanakh's history. A great outcome if you could explore how King David shaped Jewish history throughout his successes and failures. And the next one kind of ties into the next lesson as well. It overarches both, which is an even better outcome if you evaluate if the return to Jerusalem was as important as when the Jews entered the Promised Land. So we've got the idea of them entering the Promised Land. That was the time of stability they were hoping for, but then it all goes horribly wrong again. And that is what we're going to think about next time. So on that note, I shall leave it, and there'll be another clip on in a few days or early next week. I hope that you're okay. I hope that you stay safe, and remember, wash hands and God bless.